Thank you guys all so much for being here again. We have with us, I have Alicia. I don't actually remember how to spell or pronounce your last name, Alicia. Um, but Alicia,
Jarkson.
say that again.
Jarkson. The T is
Jarkson.
silent.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Alicia Jarkson from our client success team. So you might have talked to her on Intercom or seen her around Discord. And then we also have Nicholas Merten, who's our founder and CEO, who's going to be answering a lot of the questions and going through the presentation today. Let us know if you guys do have any questions. I see somebody's already kind of figured that out, or if you've been on webinars before. We will only answer questions if they're in the Q&A box. You can find that on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you put in a question in the Q&A box, we will answer it there. If it's in the chat, it's probably going to get lost. If you put it in Discord, it might get lost. So we would really, really appreciate it if you would put your questions in the Q&A box so that we can get to those after the presentation is over. Feel free to put them in during the presentation and we'll just get to them at the end. But yeah, feel free to banter in the chat as well. But other than that, I feel like that's pretty much it for housekeeping, and I will let Nick take it away.
Awesome, Hope, and Elisa as well. Thank you guys for setting this up. And I want to just take a quick moment now that you guys have had kind of proper introductions on everyone. I think the next order of business before we dive into anything is just saying thank you to you all. I know I wish I could say that in a room of the over 990 plus investors, almost 1,000 unique investors from across the world who supported this idea. I have to say for two reasons why that means a lot to me. One, it just generally as a founder is a really exciting thing. And I know that Alicia, Hope, and everyone on the team, they know that the reason they're here in this case, the reason why I'm here is because of you guys. That's already rewarding enough as is. But I have to say that it also, I think I kind of take the cake for it as well and stuff, because for me personally, as many of you probably know, that I self-funded the company during the pre-seed stage. I put a lot of my own capital into it. And we'll talk a little bit later on, a bit of a story as we go through our kind of journey as a company about some things with summer where I continue to reinvest in the company and really put this as my number one priority alongside doing things like my YouTube channel that's helped contribute a lot of growth to the app and things of the sort. So I want to go ahead and dive straight into it, guys. The key goal here real quick, just to give a bit of an outline, is as Hope probably kind of mentioned a bit, we're trying to answer about 80-90% of the major questions here at this presentation. And then after that, if there's any kind of follow-up questions on things we talked about or other niche questions about Digifox in regards to maybe short-term concerns or kind of long-term visionary aspects or any general questions, that'll be towards the end when we have a opened up Q&A. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it, everyone. The first question here is, where are we at as a company? It's quite a broad question here, but I think it's a great place to start, because what's interesting is that we launched our WeFunder campaign simultaneously with the product back on June 15th of 2020. I had actually been working on the company and the concept. It registered back in July of 2019, had the concept for even earlier than that. So Digifox has been a long time in the making. But since June of 2020, we've had about 3 full quarters of time to actually go from product launch to where we are today. And I want to kind of summarize each of the 3 quarters, as well as the quarter that we're currently living in right now, to kind of talk about the major overarching focuses here. So to give you guys this kind of verbal inside journey to what had been going on over the last last couple of months here, almost a full year, let's go ahead and dive into it. So first off is Q3 of 2020. Day 1 of launch, in this case, when we took the product live. The WeFunder was overwhelmingly supportive. Outside of that as well, the app launch came through. We had thousands of users coming on day 1 because we had a large wait list, made some major announcements as well. There was over nearly 4,000 people who were on the wait list. I think I think between the morning of, we jumped from 3,400, which we had published on the WeFunder, to nearly 4,000. So a ton of people getting on board, signing up for the app, and really kind of testing the waters with Digifox. Now, again, as much as we had a ton of users coming in, and it was a really, really exciting day, at the same time, Q3 was really defined by 3 key focus points: gas fees, improvements, general just in-app improvements, and squashing bugs. So as with any kind of app that you launch, no matter if you do quality assurance or if you just simply deploy something and see what happens, I would say, to be completely candid, as we were somewhere in the middle. We knew security was on point, but outside of that, what we really were focusing on was like, how are people going to use the app? Like, how's it going to go? And there was a lot of things that we realized. We realized on the element of user experience that, for example, there were some bugs people were encountering on certain devices, certain systems that we were using that maybe worked when we were doing alpha testing in this case, and beta testing eventually didn't work in deployment for X percentage of users. Outside of that as well, for us, back in June, gas fees on the Ethereum network, or the transaction or network fees that many of you are familiar with if you use the application, were quite low at the time, but started to amplify from the month of June going into July. And that'll be a topic of discussion I'll kind of hit back on in a moment. And then really the third one here was really squashing like critical bugs. So people not being able to recover accounts, outside of that as well, like not being able to see certain funds in their wallet. These are the things that we realized, like, okay, we need to kind of go back to the drawing board. Like, we already had features that we wanted to add on. As you all know, if you know me personally through my YouTube channel, or if you guys know just the broad vision of Digifox, the decade-long vision that we want to achieve of being an all-in-one finance app, you guys know that I want to get the ball rolling on features. But I knew that at the end of the day, we had to go back and, especially the team members, Hope, I actually give a lot of credit to in this case, alongside a few other members on our team, kind of sat me back and realized and said, Nick, like, we need to kind of, fix these things. And I knew it was true because, as many of you know, I like to sit in customer support. I like to hear from you guys. I answer a lot of tickets myself. So we kind of went down to the drawing board and really actually had one centerpiece focus that we really had to fix on our internal infrastructure. And that was how we were generating smart contract wallets. Now, most of you might know this in this case, as you guys have maybe used the product, but if you were using Digifox in the early days, as many of you were, many of you had a wallet that would generate at the beginning. It would probably take anywhere from a couple seconds to a minute or two, sometimes a little bit longer, but you would have what's known as a smart contract wallet. And Digifox was actually generating these wallets. It used to cost us around a couple cents to $1 to generate these. But as we went through the summer of 2020, where Ethereum's price was increasing and network traffic on Ethereum, which is where most of the activities on Digifox run, the cost to do any type of transaction from wallet creation to swaps or deposits was getting more and more expensive. And the problem is that for each new user that was signing up, we were generating a smart contract wallet. Now, out of all activities that someone could do inside Digifox, that's the one that gets most expensive. And it was coming to the point where it was costing $20, $30, $50 for wallet generations. And considering that, we're at the general rate now where, we're at around 17,000 users, but take a step back, of course, to the summer, we had a couple thousand users. You can start to see how those costs would add up. Now, just to let you all know ahead of time, in this sense, just for a bit of transparency and to kind of share a personal note to how much I'm committed to Digifox, I didn't use WeFunder Capital in that case in order to go through and fund those smart contract wallet generations. I actually put in my own money. I made extra distributions to the business. I had some additional Ethereum that I had personally invested in the market. And as you all know, as I mentioned earlier, from being a pre-seed, kind of the pre-seed funder of Digifox and the founder in this case, I wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to eat into our runway as a company because, Hope, everyone on our team and stuff who had been there at the time, I wanted to make sure that they're going to be able to continue doing what they do best and to hopefully deliver on our vision. So to me, making that extra investment was really worth it. And to just be honest with you guys, it was a pretty good sum of capital. But the good news is what that allowed us to do is it allowed us to have a transition period where we modified how we generated smart contract wallets. And we basically just requested users do a one-time fee, right? They pay a one-time cost. And they could do it in different time intervals. They could have it generated in 24 hours for a discounted price, where we could maybe catch the network at a cheaper rate in regards to network fees, or a one-time fee that just made pretty much near instant generation. So that was the original setup, and it actually fixed that issue, which was really cool. But going on towards the end of the summer, stepping into the fall, we stepped towards planning for Q4. And this was kind of not only from retouching up the app, which was kind of the focus in Q3, so making sure we did what we did good. Not only that, like going into Q4, what we really wanted to do is say, okay, look, guys, we had a good amount of users who incurred some of these bugs, maybe didn't have the best first impression of Digifox. And there's still a ton of people, on this open sea of opportunity of new users who are getting into the crypto space, who are getting more and more eager about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. At the time, we didn't support Bitcoin. So we were like, that's a key thing we want to do. And outside of that as well, like being able to just make sure our user experience is the cleanest out of any application out there. And I'm going to tell you guys as the CEO, even from that launch and going forward, I'm of the mindset it's like, I'm always like thinking, hey, we can do this better, this and that. But I have to say that the team delivered phenomenally well on Digifox 2.0. And that was the centerpiece of Q4. It was this 3-month update where we had our entire design and engineering team come together and add real-time real-time portfolio tracking, so you could see how your portfolio changed over time in regards to its balance. We had a number flippers, so it looked really clean in the design. The app really came to life. We made sure to fix any other kind of impending bugs or user experience flaws. We added the ability to support Bitcoin. So through our fiat on-ramps and through Celsius, you can not only deposit and earn interest on Bitcoin, but you can purchase it as well. So we had a ton of things that came through the kind of winter release of the Digifox 2.0 release. And it was really, really great for the app. On the sense of user kind of like metrics, we had basically an equivalent large spike like we did on the first week of launch. And it brought a ton of new users to the app and made our recurring user numbers go up to a pretty large degree. So again, this was a really good turning point for our application. However, over the last quarter here in Q1 was really defined by a lot of internal changes. So Q1 involved not only planning to scale out on hiring. Crypto was not slowing down, and we knew that it's not going to slow down for another year or so, if not maybe even a couple years. So we needed to start planning on hiring, and in this case, more than doubling our team at the time. And outside of this as well, almost nearly tripling as well, just to be clear here, just to talk about the scale, it was about a 2 to 3x increase. But outside of this, well, scaling our infrastructure, it's, the way we kind of went about building the app, our previous lead engineer, in this case, Chase, who, as you, I guess, probably saw in the WeFunder, he did a phenomenal job building the existing version of Digifox. It worked great and stuff in a lot of capacities. It did what it was supposed to do. But the thing is, we realized that we were starting to hit some limits. Some of you, for example, like very, very small kind of user experience things, small user experience things that can get in the way for kind of new users into the app, and just basically is going to compile more and more issues. So we had to revisit architecture to scale it. And this is generally what's known as technical debt, right? Resolving things that need to be kind of resolved, or rebuilding things so you're not putting out a ton of fires and things just work as they're intended. It's very different to build a kind of first deliverable version of the application, even with some improvements and modifications that's aimed at supporting 10 to 20,000 users, than to build an application that supports 100,000 plus users. And that's kind of what we need to be at, because as I'm going to kind of allude to in Q2, we've got some major features that we have planned, especially if we want to be an all-in-one finance app. So between hiring, between kind of revamping things, reworking our infrastructure, clearing out that technical debt, we haven't focused too extensively on features this quarter. It's really been about thinking about where we want to go in Q2, making sure we have the design work, everything ready for implementation here in April and May, and really delivering on that and having that new infrastructure in the back end that's going to make it all just run extremely smooth. So you're not having to patch bugs, you're not having to do all that kind of stuff. So again, kind of going from kind of the MVP first version and iteration of the product with some improvements into a real Class A cryptocurrency application. And this leads us to Q2, which we're in right now, right? It's been a journey over the last 9 months, but there's a lot of things that we have in store, guys, for Q2, especially going into late April and the early mid part of May. We have 2 major feature releases we're targeting for that range. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I can't share exactly what those features are going to be. They're going to have to wait for a later date, but we want to keep you guys on the edge of your seats, because I have to say they're 2 of the most exciting things that we've been looking forward to launch for Digifox. So you guys, again, will hear about it once it comes out. We will announce it on WeFunder. We'll announce it in our social channels. I see Frank is he's saying, "Oh man, yeah, no, I really wish I could share it with you guys." But like, if you guys, my understanding at the end of the day is that you guys know that I'm invested in this, and outside of that as well, I genuinely believe in the vision of what we're building. So I want to make it very, very clear that Q2, I think, is going to solidify. The Digifox is going to come bigger and better than ever. We're going to probably experience our biggest wave of user growth that we've seen yet. And it's all realistic in the sense of delivery dates. So that's a really good thing. We have a reasonable roadmap on how we're going to get there. We've gotten through a lot of the hard stuff, which is why since back after the holidays, we've been kind of quiet as we've been scaling up the team and preparing for this next stage. But anyways, so yeah, the other thing outside that is not just these big feature releases we have. There's some things that I can talk about with you guys as well. Some core features that you need to have in an application that, to be fair, we really hadn't prioritized early on. And looking back on it, we think we probably should have, and in hindsight in this case, and being self-critical and thinking about how we can improve things. We want to, for example, actually implement referrals. So we're going to start rolling this out in 2 phases. The general game plan now is to have it where you can at least visualize referrals. So let's say that Hope referred me to Digifox. She'd be able to see that not only I've been referred under her account, so she can see that in her list of referred users, but also she'll be able to see like the owed revenue that she deserves from like Digifox once the payouts go live. With gas fees being as high as they are, we can't roll out payouts just yet. Like for example, just to kind of contextualize things, let's say you generated 20, 30 bucks in fees from like your friends who you referred. A network fee for claiming that those funds, this is not us making revenue, it's just the Ethereum network the way that it is. Right now with how expensive it is, it can cost 3, 5, 10 bucks to make that transfer. And that's ridiculous. We don't want that cutting into your revenue that you should be earning. So we're going to be exploring a variety of solutions, including layer 2 solutions like Optimism, to be able to make sure that we can get those gas fees down to nearly nothing. And payments will be practically instantaneous and cheap, right? Pretty much free. That's something we're going to be working on down the line. And we'll make sure that the referrals get fixed first and foremost. And the last thing along with that with referrals, as you guys can probably guess, and that is one of the questions I'm kind of answering a bit early, is WeFunder perks, which is going to be a little bit later on. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about it. But the good news is WeFunder perks will be a part of that referral system because they kind of go hand in hand, So now let's go ahead and talk about the most asked question outside of just generally how the company's doing is Digifox planning to conduct another raise in 2021? Now, I'll tell you guys here, this is officially my first rodeo of creating a startup, but I understand how the world of startups works to a pretty large degree, and I understand very clearly what kind of raise we did. We did a safe note raise, and this is a raise here where you have basically what's known as convertible equity. And for those of you who may not know, I'll just take a moment to explain this. Safe notes are what you got for investing in Digifox. So unlike a traditional crowdfunding, where you just literally might get perks or nothing, I wanted to do an equity crowdfunding. I believe people not only want to generally invest more, but they should have skin in the game for what they invest in, right? Just like, for example, it's why a big reason why I self-fund my company. I wanted to have ownership of my company and guide that vision going forward. So I wanted to make sure we could do an equity crowdfunding rather than the traditional VC route. So you guys would be able to have stake in the company. And the standard for the vast majority of startups is to do a safe note offering, which gives you a form of convertible equity that gets converted at a later date. Now, the good news here to the ultimate question you guys were wondering is whether or not we are doing a raise is yes, we are planning to do another raise. This is not officially confirmed in the sense of the date or expectations, but we are thinking probably sometime in the summer or the fall that we're going to be planning to do a Series A here, probably much more likely in the summer. Now, the reason why we want to do a raise here is for a couple reasons. One, it does give us some extended runway, some extra capital to work with as we expand and continue to grow our team. But there's a lot of important reasons why I wanted to do it for you guys as investors, because technically when you have a safe note, it's not actionable equity in the company, right? It's a form of convertible ownership later in the future. Right. So a safe note, in this case, being a holder of a safe note, a Series A is everything to you guys, because that allows you to officially have titled ownership in this case of a portion of the company, real equity in this case. That makes it a bit more actionable. Now, it's important to note that with equity crowdfunding, this is not me choosing to do this. This is the standard for WeFunder, for every other equity crowdfunding site. That a portion of that does go to the lead investor, who's John Devidas. He's been not only a critical kind of counsel or advisor for me over the last, really the last 2 years as I've gone from the initial stages of having Digifox as a company or as an idea, but molding into a company. But outside of this, well, he votes on your behalf. So I just wanted to take that time to share it with you all because, you know, all of the investors in here, I assume you guys are really the most active, maybe like kind of participants as being investors in Digifox. And equity crowdfunding might be new to you guys. So I want to make that very clear that like John is your representative. And I put him in that place because I know John is going to serve you guys well. And overall, I'm thinking that John or another individual and stuff who can provide extensive value for the company, that position of the kind of lead investor who represents all the WeFunder investors, it's very important to get right. So I want to make sure, again, we do that for the Series A as well. But this is a really cool thing here, guys. If you want, you can participate in the next Series A, even if you don't feel like doing it, because the valuation will be higher. You know, at the end of the day, we're going to be raising from other WeFunder investors. That's the really cool thing. So the SEC, just over the last few months, increased the equity crowdfunding limit from what we raised up to potentially, which was $1,070,000. We only ended up raising really around $600,000. But now you can raise up to $5 million. So you can actually do like a Series A through equity crowdfunding. And a Series A is just basically the next round after a seed fund, where you're usually raising anywhere from 1 to 5 million, depending on what type of company or industry you're in. So yeah, we're going to be doing a Series A there. Again, more details will come over time. I know a lot of you are probably curious to learn about those and what it entails. Similar to what we did through the equity crowdfunding through WeFunder. Reason being, guys, I don't want VCs owning my company. I want the community owning it. I think having nearly 1,000 unique investors across the world, like we do with our initial crowdfunding, is so much more powerful. And I know that all of you guys are here for the long-term vision. VCs aren't always like that, and angel investors aren't either. They're looking to, you know, invest in a company, go to the next, right? You guys, I think, see the vision of building an all-in-one finance product, and that's very important to me. So making sure that we do any future subsequent rounds in that case is going to be even more critical. So next question here, it's very relevant for a lot of you. When will WeFunder Perks go live? Well, I kind of hinted to this earlier, but WeFunder Perks are going to be going live around the time we do the referral system. The thing that we need to factor in for it that might take a little bit of time is we need to have a way where you are able to confirm and connect your WeFunder account with your Digifox account. We don't know specifically that, we don't know specifically that your WeFunder account is your Digifox wallet. Now, there's a few quick solutions that we're looking at, possibly matching, for example, like we know your Digifox email in this case that you used to register your account. We have to know that for our systems to work. And we might know that, for example, on our investor spreadsheet, the email might line up in that case. So we're looking at some ways maybe streamline it and maybe notify and blast notify our users. But this is probably, to play it safe, I want to make it clear that it's probably going to have to be a manual process where you guys go back claiming them with Digifox directly through customer support and go through a few-step verification process. So we're working on this right now. The biggest thing we need to do, though, is make sure we can get the feature functionable. So you guys start getting your discounted fees, et cetera, for any preceding fees in the future, right? So it just displays that you're under the specified tiers. All right, next up here, just to kind of explain when will they go live, again, just to hit on the dates again, we're thinking, just to play it safe, probably more likely May in this case. And again, we'll work as best as we can to get to the period of time where we can recompensate people for like previous fees. The important thing to note, though, is that, again, because gas fees are very high, we might opt in to wait until Optimism, the layer 2 solution we're planning to use, gets deployed. And that might be until July. So just bear that in mind. Again, if it's urgent, we can probably make exceptions for you guys if you reach out to us through customer support. But again, just know that it's not us not wanting to pay back or anything like that. The network fees are just excessively high right now. And it can kind of cut into our runway overall, to be completely candid. So question here, runway estimations, when are we looking to go to? So here's the thing, as you guys probably heard earlier, and I kind of hinted to the runway here as we're planning to possibly do a raise in the summer, we've got plentiful amounts of runway to comfortably ride out till July or August. I want to make two things very clear here, guys. If it were to be the case that for some reason either expenses got larger or the runway was shorter than this estimate before we could clear a Series A and get some of those funds from our next raise, I will personally commit in this case to standing by and investing a decent amount into the company in this case. I've done it before, and I do it not expecting anything. I'm doing it because I've invested a lot already in the company in the sense of time, and also believe in the team and I believe in the community. There's a reason I've wanted to build this company, And I just want to give you guys that peace of mind and comfort that I'm going to do my best to make sure that, again, if we ever go over our one way, in this case, if we're not able to process a raise before then, in this case, I will help cover things in the interim before we get on to that next raise. So that's going to be my kind of goal in that case. But anyways, yeah, runway estimations looking towards July or August. Overall, we're doing good. As we've scaled up the team, we have built out our engineering department quite heavily, and that does cut into runway, right? So that's been probably our biggest expense overall. But we also built out our client success team as well. So those are really the major things. We're not spending it on nifty marketing, ad campaigns, Google AdWords or anything like that. We're really focusing on scaling up the team and making the product better, because I'm a big believer that the product will speak for itself. If we get a good referral system out there, the product does what it's supposed to do. You guys, the WeFunder investors, the users, the most dedicated fans and family members of the Digifox app, you guys are going to lead the app forward much, much better than any kind of expensive ad campaign. So just wanted to kind of build some details there to kind of share my mindset overall with like kind of doing marketing. We eventually will do marketing when we have the capital and we start scaling out. But organic growth is usually how you want to start growing a startup at the end of the day, especially with the kind of free publicity we have to my YouTube channel and a variety of other channels and outlets. All right. So next up here, when will the next WeFunder update be? So the next WeFunder update is probably going to be sometime around May 1st. I know, to be fair, guys, for those of you who are kind of time-tested WeFunder investors, some people do updates. Some founders honestly do updates every week. Some of them do once a year. For me, I like to strike it in the middle. I think personally doing quarterly updates are where it's at. And if there are some interjections, and as we scale out our team and stuff, like as we're doing things on a month-to-month basis, with feature releases, then perhaps we might start doing monthly ones. But I personally like doing quarterly. And here's why. I like to treat it in this sense, like it's a quarterly report, like a publicly traded company, right? I get to kind of tell you guys, like, here are the major things that we learned from this month. Here's where we're going forward. And eventually in the future, or actually, and I'll kind of dive into this in a little bit when it regards to financials, we're working on getting an audit, or not per se an audit, but getting our bookkeeping straight, making sure we can actually hopefully report to you guys like the actual financial reporting of like how the company's doing, right? Where are we cutting into our churn or burn rate in this case, right? Anyways, so that's something that I want to kind of nail down, that we decided to do things on a quarterly basis. And there's also another big reason for that. I write these updates, guys, and as much as this might sound, I don't mean to sound pretentious at all, but I really think it's a waste of time to do updates every single week, because that's an hour or so, maybe even an hour and a half if it's a really lengthy article, that I can work towards doing things related to the company itself, right? I can help out team members. I can work on some of the big feature releases we have coming. I really think that doing things between a monthly, quarterly basis is the best plan of action. So the next one we're going to be looking for is going to be coming up in May, when we've got our two major kind of feature releases that we're going to be announcing to you guys, which I'm really, really excited about. It'll be broken up into two separate WeFunder articles, so stay tuned for that. Keep eyesight on those two notifications, and check your WeFunder feed. But yep, that's pretty much it for that question there. So last thing here is to talk a little bit about DeFi and the future of Digifox. So this encompasses a couple different things, and I don't want to ramble too long before we can actually dive into answering questions. I'm glad we're actually through the presentation portion for the first half here. But the thing I want to really hint here, guys, is that DeFi, while it's a very exciting technology, has become very cumbersome for a lot of people to use. And it mainly has to do with the cost of interacting with DeFi. So Digifox itself today, if you want to go make swaps, if you want to go deposit and earn interest, you can do all those things. And if you're working with a couple $1,000s, maybe even a couple $100s, right? Or maybe we have some users in this case, again, who are more high net worth individuals, where it makes total sense for them to use these, even with the higher gas costs. But for the kind of 80 to 90% of people who we're still trying to reach, and some of you might be in that category. Maybe some of you put in $100 to $300 in our WeFunder, and that's a lot to you. And when it comes to your crypto portfolio, you only have a few $100s, right? It becomes unusable when gas fees are extremely high. And that's not a limitation of Digifox. It's a limitation of the Ethereum network. And it's not just us pushing up the blame. It's literally just why these costs are really expensive. It's something out of our control that we can't modify, right? So the good news is there's a lot of technologies coming out, but they're most likely coming out at the most optimistic date, and no pun intended, technologies like Optimism that are going to allow for reducing wallet generation costs from $50 per wallet or $100 per wallet down to, maybe $1 or a couple, cents, maybe 50, 70 cents, or swaps from 40, 50 bucks down to really just a couple pennies, right? In order for these technologies to come out, it's going to take some time. So I want to make it very clear that Digifox in the interim, while a lot of smart wallets and other kind of players in the space that are similar to us are probably focusing solely on waiting for those events to come. We're going to be prepared for those events when they come in the summer. In the interim, one of the major feature releases that we have coming up that I, again, can't talk about today, I just want to make it very clear is going to help us pivot a bit during this period. And it's going to be a long-term USP that is going to make us stand out big time, in my opinion. I think it is going to change the game for crypto, for people especially who haven't even gotten involved in crypto yet. It's going to remove the barriers of entry to a large degree. And I'm very excited to see how it launches. It probably won't be perfect, but we're going to continue to build on top of it over time. That's the critical goal. So anyways, guys, you've listened to me ramble on enough. I really appreciate it. I want to go ahead and open up the QA, maybe even let Hope and Lisa dive in if you guys have some answers to some of the questions. But I guess we can go ahead and start diving into some of the questions in the Zoom chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. We really appreciate all the things you dove into. A few of the questions we've probably already answered in the presentation. But Dries wants to know what the user growth rate over the last few months has been.
Yeah, so it's that question's a bit broad because if you're looking over it on over the last few months, I'll say this. So the general way you can kind of view, for me, I really like to focus in this case not just on user accounts, right? Because just looking at users in this case, like someone who logs logs in the app once or maybe creates an account, right? It doesn't give you a full visual window of like how are people using it. So usually general time windows of like active users is good. To generally define the shape of how our users have grown, there was the first initial surge back during June of 2020 when we launched. There was a lot of presence from the wait list, from the WeFunder, all the social posts we had from people sharing the word about it, my YouTube channel. And to be completely candid with you guys, we did have a bit of drop off there in the sense of kind of like the active users, because there were some users who I paid out of pocket for, in this case, to generate smart contract wallets for. And overall, either they were, having some kind of issue or they ran into some kind of bug or something where they basically had stepped away for a while. So we had this period where overall, like we had a good window where on an average day-to-day basis, we had around 500 to 1,000 active users. Kind of test around within the application. And then once it came time when we launched out the feature in this case to allow people to, not per se the specified feature, my apologies. When we launched Digifox 2.0, which corrected a lot of wrongs in this case within the app, that's when we started to see a really good amount of users come back to the application, where our user numbers are doing really well in like a 7-day, 30-day average. Because some people, again, bear in mind, are keeping in deposits and they're not checking their app constantly. So there's a few different metrics to keep in mind, right? Overall, user growth is doing really good at this point. The second thing to mention as well, another probably better way to measure users is either through swap volume and deposits. I prefer deposits in this case because that's what actually generates revenue for us. And outside of that as well, kind of showcases are people putting more assets in the platform. It's not that users don't matter, but that's kind of what matters at the end of the day, is that so long as AUM's growing or assets under management, you usually have a growth of users. Now, I don't have the chart here, but I do actually want to hopefully, maybe in one of our next WeFunder article updates, I can showcase the amount of AUM that's coming through our Celsius accounts. That would be really valuable. We did a meetup rally with some of the internal team at Celsius. And I got to tell you guys, not only just, even if you discount in this case, the growth of digital assets and price, the actual growth is phenomenal, especially post December release. We've really started to go parabolic in the sense of AUM. So very, very excited in the sense of assets under management and users. And again, just to kind of mention the total users in this case right now, if you're including Digifox Pro users, Celsius users within Digifox, you're talking about around 17 to 17.5 thousand at the moment. So really good amount of user growth in that sense overall. Major chunks of those users did come from those big catalyst feature releases or updates like Digifox 2.0 and the initial launch of the application.
Mhm. This is going to be a really quick one, so we already answered it in the presentation, but Ascend, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Any plans for a Series A funding? And it sounds like the answer is yes, probably sometime in the summer. So
that's correct. Yeah, we're kind of like figuring out like what do we want our raise target to be, like expected runway post that Series A. And to be fair overall, guys, again, like there is a variety of options we're looking at and stuff, but we would really prefer to make sure that the biggest priority for the Series A is not just runway, right? There's a ton of ways you can raise. The biggest thing for that Series A is to make sure you guys can convert your safe notes. That was the first thing I realized when I kind of learned about the safe note process. I was like, okay, I want to make sure we got a game plan to make sure they have equity, right? Because that's a big comfort for investors. And it's something just to let you guys know, like going forward, if you're doing more equity crowdfunding investing outside of Digifox, always keep that in mind. It's a good question to ask, and founders should have a game plan for that.
For sure.
Okay, Manfred Reuter asks, in the time of SOX, what is being done in Digifox to avoid situation where accounts are being reset by accident and the user is forced to go through a still broken recovery process?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of the sentence in that case?
In the time of SOX, what is being done in Digifox to avoid situation where accounts are being reset by accident?
Yeah, it seems like they're just wondering how are we doing with fixing the account recovery issues?
Yeah.
Got it. Yes, sir. I was getting stuck up on the SOX like term or acronym. Sorry. No, overall, that's a great question. So in regards to the wallet recovery issues, we're having a few different users experiencing this issue. It's basically just to let you all know, and I genuinely mean this. I'd swear by it. It's really our number one priority because overall, and just to kind of explain the situation a bit more, we noticed that a couple of users had been experiencing, and it still seems to be kind of an edge case. It's not affecting the vast majority of users, but it seems like there's an edge case that's affecting some users with wallet recovery. And as we've been going through kind of modifying our infrastructure, we want to make sure that as we're doing it, there's not anything that might be kind of like messing up the existing smart contract recovery system. We're also, along with that as well, looking to add additional layers of security to it going forward as we start to plan for layer 2. So this will be the activation of a variety of other additional layers of security that we wanted to build on top of the existing smart contract wallets for a while. But needless to say, on that specific question, again, there's not too much we can dive into, but the major thing is that we're constantly focusing on that first. So we just to kind of showcase some actionable items in this case that kind of prove that. Some of you might know him already if you've been chatting with him in customer support, but we've got a lead support engineer and also a quality assurance team member, which is his name is Francis. So Francis is like a 1 to 2 decade long support engineer in regards to traditional companies like Fidelity. He worked at a lot of major companies beforehand, and he's brought a really nice kind of institutional quality assurance and bug catching process to kind of help walk through people on issues, figure out what's causing these things, and be able to resolve things long term. So again, he's kind of like the number one action item we wanted to make sure we got as we went through the hiring process. And he's kind of, if you want to understand kind of the corporate structure, he works directly with Hope and leading on the client success team with members like Alicia, Ben, Mel, Nina, as well as Mark that you guys have maybe met or chatted with before. So yeah, he's a really great asset to the team. And luckily we're quite confident we're going to come to a solution here very soon in the near future.
Yeah, another title for Francis is all around rock star. So
he most certainly is. And I'll be honest, guys, he's one of the types where he does not sleep easy when stuff like this is going on. I mean, none of us really do. I want to make that very clear. It's a number one priority for us. Like we we want to basically we're just as keen to fix these kind of issues for the few users that it's affecting and stuff, because we stop a lot of what we're doing on the feature side when things like this happen. And it's a roadblock in this case. Like we want to go out and do really fun things, but we don't want to keep putting out fires in this case. So we want to basically figure out what's the core issue that's causing this, get to the bottom of it, and make sure again that, as many of you have probably gotten by now, we make sure that we prompt you guys with Digifox Gold and stuff for being patient with us. We're a startup, but at the same time, we want to have the matured respect in that case. And we have to earn it in that case for making sure that you guys have a sound experience, as you would expect from any kind of major company.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Manfred also asks, what is the plan to support layer 2 solutions? We kind of already talked about this. If I'm not mistaken, we're kind of dependent a little bit on like Uniswap and other platforms like developing those things. Because I've heard in the past from other people, like, why are you guys not working on it? And it's like, well, because we integrate with all these third parties.
Exactly.
So they kind of have to do it, and then we can use their platform, So.
You put it 100% right, Hope. Couldn't have said it better myself. The general problem here, guys, is that honestly, I've been a supporter of Uniswap for a very long period of time. As you guys might know, if you watch my YouTube channel, or if you think about it, and we created Digifox in June of 2020, right before DeFi took off. Before then, for years, I've loved DeFi. And the one concern I always had is considering that when you start doing decentralized exchanges, when you start making deposits with interest-bearing protocols, and all types of other DeFi apps, you start to make more expensive transactions. Like, it's more data intensive. And that's why the fees for a swap are much higher than maybe, say, sending a transaction from one wallet to another. It's much more complex in the sense of computation. And this was a problem that we saw in hindsight I think I generally saw in hindsight, or not necessarily, a long time ago, I foresaw it in this case being an issue, but I never imagined in the last summer of 2020 that this would be an issue for like wallet generation, getting to as expensive as where it was. And the thing was, unfortunately, Uniswap has not really pursued, alongside a lot of major DeFi apps, they haven't pursued integrating some form of layer 2 solution. And to be fair, there's a few reasons for this. One, you need a layer 2 solution that's not for just sending and receiving payments like most of them are. If you look at, for example, Polygon, if you look at, which was previously Matic, if you look at, for example, Omise Go, if you look at any kind of major like layer 2 solutions that a lot of people are like, oh, there's a token for this, it's out there, it's existed, most of them are going to be around scaling payments. Uniswap needs what's basically known as EVM functionality. They need Ethereum virtual machine functionality, which is basically all the complexity within all the code that makes up Solidity contracts. They need to be able to operate those complex functions just like they can on Ethereum. And that's something that a scaling solution like Optimism offers. The problem is Optimism was planning to deploy in March. So we were all very bubbly about that. We were like, oh, there's going to be Optimism mainnet is going to be launching soon. And unfortunately, they have, due to making sure that they launch things right, they've decided they want to push it back to July. Now, I got to tell you guys, I'm one of those people like something needs to give, right? Unfortunately, I am no Solidity developer. We cannot build our own layer 2 solution. And even if we could, the problem is that we would need Uniswap and every other DeFi protocol to integrate with that layer 2 solution. And that is very, very unlikely. So we have to kind of follow their guide. And I actually trust their judgment, to be completely candid, guys, much better than my own, right? Because these people, at the end of the day, they want to get gas fees down. They don't want their users paying $30, $40 network fees for swap. It doesn't benefit Uniswap. That's more money that you could be using to swap on their platform, right? So overall, those fees go to the miners on the Ethereum network who validate transactions. So they're going to be pushing out things as soon as they can. The updated target for Optimism's mainnet is July. Good news is people can start getting prepared for it. They can start making battle testing their application to be ready for Optimism, so that when mainnet comes, you can deploy your contracts. So that's smart contract wallets, swaps, deposits, transfers, anything that you do within Digifox that's a transaction will be done eventually in Optimism. And we're hoping to have it when it launches on mainnet in July. But it's going to take some time. And we actually have 2 new engineers in the team that are Solidity developers. So the good news is we've got good hands in this case to actually make sure we do things properly. And most importantly, we don't rush to it. We do it in a secure manner. That's very, very critical.
Mm-hmm. Please, you want to grab that?
Yeah. Brian Nestico. What is the current testing approach and structure? Is there regression testing being executed before new releases? I work as a QA engineer, and seeing several bugs lately makes me think testing needs to be raised as a priority.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Oh, no, if you want to add to that, Lisa, I'm happy to jump in as well on it.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's a very good question. So yes, as you might be able to tell, especially if you're someone who works in QA, again, we just hired on Francis back in March. So what he's been mainly doing first and foremost is getting documentation for standard operating procedures. He's been getting to know the client success team, setting up some API testing, a variety of kind of things that he needs to get established right away that were kind of key priority. But in regards to doing, I forget the specific term you mentioned. I apologize. I'm very bad with like business and technical lingo. But in regards to that kind of point about like testing releases before they actually go live, that's something that we're for sure doing before we launch our 2 new feature releases and any new feature releases in the future. That's what Francis is going to do. He, as I mentioned, has got a decade, almost nearly 2 decades of quality assurance and technical support engineer experience at major companies like Fidelity. So he's going to be able to take that approach, build out a standard procedure. We're actually going to be meeting about it sometime next week to actually build on that game plan for how he's actually planning to go about doing QA, getting everything he needs together, and making sure we have all the resources planned. I know for certain, again, just to be completely candid, guys, we've had some bugs here and there and stuff, but that was because of the previous way our kind of lead engineers operating was more like, getting features out, fixing things later, kind of hot fixes. We really want to get down to restructuring architecture.
Yeah, and just to be, we went through some different transitions, and it might look like we're going a lot slower now, but that's just because we're doing a lot of work that's looks like kind of invisible, just because it's on the back end side of things. We're just working on making sure that quality assurance is there where it kind of wasn't as much before. Which is, like Nick said, a big reason why we have Francis now. And he's been doing a phenomenal job. Like I said, one of his nicknames is now rock star. So he's awesome. And we love having him. And he's been doing a great job building out that QA process so that we're going to fix, try to fix all the problems that we have right now, and then fix any problems that we see in new features before we launch them so that there's less bugs upon release.
Yeah, one way to kind of put the mindset into play here, you hit it really good there, Hope, is that we want our client success team. So, Hope, Alicia, even myself, when I'm doing tickets, I don't want to have to be resolving like technical issues. I want the app to be so clean that we're just answering questions like, what's Celsius, or like, what does it mean? Like, what is APR? Like, all these kind of general questions, or what is Bitcoin and crypto? Like,
Yeah,
can you give
those
me
are the fun questions.
Yeah, because it's important for 2 reasons. One, it's much better to be doing that. You don't want to be having problems every day, because at that point you've got a broken application.
Yeah.
But outside of that as well, we basically want to be able to scale out client success long term. And having for example, we have 4 full-time people on like the core client success team and stuff, with Hope leading alongside Francis. 2 additional members, and we have a part-time, which is Nina. So many of you probably met her as well, to help us kind of meet 24/7 support. But the general thing is that even with all these resources and all these great people on our team, we will not be able to scale out customer support if there's technical errors that a lot of users are experiencing. We can scale out documentation, still maintaining answers to questions for people, for general guidance on certain questions and getting started, or things within the app. Because you can make documentation, you can make all these things, and still with all of that, you can maintain the human element, which is what you have to maintain in customer support, that so many companies don't. So again, that's our kind of philosophy. And we also don't want our engineers becoming support engineers. That's something that we hear a lot from our CIO, Jake, in this case. It's basically, you want to make sure in this case that they're servicing their job as engineers to build features, which is the fun part. So
yes. Awesome. I can grab this one. Asen asked, how big is the Digifox team? And I actually know this because we're trying to work on building a team page for our website. So I had to count how many people we have so that Julius, our designer, could lay everything out. We actually have, I just counted like 16 people. So there's a client success team, engineering team, we have a product team, And then, there's Nick and there's me and, we have the leadership team, marketing team. So we have 16 people, which is kind of cool because, about almost a year, 9, 10, 11 months ago, there was only like, 4 of us. So
I think that when I was hired, there was only like 5 or 6,
right.
right?
Yeah. I think I remember talking to you and being like, yeah, there's only 6 of us right now.
Yeah, and that was in January and I was interviewing. So
Right.
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yep. So we're a lot bigger now. And
I'm glad I wasn't off on my math of 2 to 3xing the team. There we
you
go.
you were right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome.
But yeah, no, I can just tell you guys, like, to all of you, I think there's 2 things that I always like wonder about when I'm investing in a company is like, it's really, I focus on people. Like you can have a great idea, but like, if you don't have the right people to execute it, that's really, that's a very imperative issue that needs to be resolved. Right. So basically, like when it comes to the founder, you guys have to make that judgment and stuff overall as investors, if I'm serving as a great founder, and the team members as well. But I have to tell you guys, for what I can speak on, the team we've hired is A grade. The client success team, as you guys have probably met, talking to them, have been phenomenal, really stepping up to the plate, even helping a little bit in marketing as we're looking to build out the marketing department. And outside of that as well, we've got a ton of new kind of head positions in the company, or like chief positions in this case overall, for like chief marketing, product manager, a CIO and a lead engineer in this case. We've kind of moved some people around the company and stuff, moving them up, and then also bringing in some new people. And it's just been phenomenal. The engineering team has synchronized so well. Everyone's eager to take on tasks within our sprints. So it's very, very nice.
I'll let Alicia take Jake's question real quick.
Jake Endersby. Not sure if this has been discussed or mentioned before. This is my first time joining a presentation.
You're welcome.
Will implementation of tax help like TaxBit be within the app? I know in the UK, crypto taxes aren't the easiest, and although some websites offer the app would benefit from providing a yearly tax type thing. Furthermore, I look forward to the app finally allowing old Celsius accounts within the app rather than creating a new one. This is the only reason as to why I don't currently use the app as my main app.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so we were hoping to have TaxBit this year, but then there was some technical problems. We couldn't integrate them fully in time for tax season, which is probably why you saw the email that I sent out with information about how to get your tax information. You can still use TaxBit, and you can actually get, I think, a 10% or some kind of discount for if you use the link that I sent for using TaxBit. And then by next year, we hope to have them integrated in there. And then for the Celsius question, that's all on Celsius. They have to, they would have to build that out, unfortunately. So it's not really up to us. But if they were to build that out, then we would most definitely offer that feature. It's just that it's something that they would have to do, and it's not really a high priority for them. So there's not really much we can do about that. But
yeah, it's a bit unfortunate just to hit on those 2 points, because they are like they're 2 pain points and stuff. So in regards to taxes, as Hope mentioned in the interim, you guys can use the discounted code to TaxBit. And they have, like, first off, even if you want to just see if it works for you and it makes sense to use them, you can literally follow the steps and at no cost and within the document that Hope sent over. And if you guys need it, in this case, Hope can probably find the link and relay it to you guys. But anyways, in regards to that, like, you can try TaxBit, give it a go. And if it looks like everything plugs in properly and you want to get your documentation, then you can go about actually paying for one of the plans there. Long term, my goal is to integrate a tax solution, probably not one that we build, someone like TaxBit in this case, who at the end of the day does the best job possible, can get you the most accurate report so you can file properly, and hopefully do it at no cost. The unfortunate reality is that there are some system costs to actually operating TaxBit. My assumption in the past and stuff is that we'd be able to do it like a kind of like fixed deal in this case, where we have like a fixed annual rate. Unfortunately, it's on a per user basis. And for some users in this case, if you only have like $200, $300, it doesn't make sense for us to pay the cost in that case for tax documentation generation. However, next year, you are going to have to provide tax documentation for crypto wallets and exchanges. So we are working with TaxBit on finding something that can work, overall for users on the application. The good news is Celsius is kind of an example of like the approach that they're taking. And that is that they're doing like reasonable tax reporting. So for example, they're giving out tax documentation to any of you out there who generated, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Hope, I think it's over $600 of interest income in 2020.
Yeah, if you had over $600 in interest, $600 or more, Celsius will be physically mailing you 1099.
Yes. So this is the thing to think about, guys. Like overall, like it's best to report as accurate as you can. And the good news is, like within Digifox, you're ever only going to have 2 taxable events. Well, in most circumstances, there could be a third one that might happen, and I'll explain that in a minute. The first one is capital gains or losses. So if you guys had bought something, sold something, right? It's the difference between those two is that's either a capital gain or capital loss. Now this might vary. I'm talking more US here. This might vary in the UK and a few other regions. The other one as well is interest income. So in the US, this would be under 1099. In this case, it's deemed as other kind of miscellaneous income. But yeah, just making sure to report any interest income that came from payouts during 2020. The last third one might be if you're selling your crypto. Let's say, for example, like I'm sending crypto to a merchant to buy something, right? So I'm just doing a send and receive transaction. A normal send and receive transaction isn't a taxable event. If it's to a merchant to buy a good or service, that is a taxable event. So we're going to try to factor for those as well in the future as we roll out merchant services, et cetera. But the biggest ones that, again, are really important to the IRS and other tax authorities is reporting capital gains and losses, and then outside of that as well, any interest income. And to the point about Celsius, again, guys, I want to be as candid as I can about this. The unfortunate thing is that Celsius, we work through Celsius's partner program. So they really don't have much inclination overall to basically make it where, again, as Hope mentioned, they'd have to build out this feature. They are very tight with their engineering resources, building out other features and stuff and things that they want to do, improving the core service that they have, which is earning interest. That will, again, all those benefits will translate over to Digifox in this case for earning interest as we're a partner with them. But overall, like as you can tell, that's just not a priority for them. They're kind of hoping in this case that we're bringing on new people who haven't opened Celsius wallets before. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of key goal with their partner program that we operate through. Nonetheless, we do hope to work with them on that, especially as we grow to being one of their larger partners. We're going to press big time for that, like being able to port over existing Celsius accounts. Because I think even Celsius agrees, you guys should have that flexibility to move in between different apps.
Yeah, for sure. Serge wants to know, so are you saying you were not tracking referrals previously? And that's not true. We were, and we are still. Mm-hmm. It's not visualized within the app. So it's being tracked, you just can't see it. I've actually been able to go in and see it myself. I was like, Chase showed it to me. So it's working, it's just not visible. So that's what Nick was talking about, is we're going to be working on making what's there visible so that people can see it. Because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, if you can't see it, it's not there. So we're working on building it out so you can actually see it, because it's there in the code and it's being tracked, but no one can see it. So we want to make it visible for everyone.
Exactly. Hope hit perfectly, hit the nail on the head in that case. Again, the referral system has been working, guys. We would have for sure either removed it or notified people ahead of time if it wasn't. It is working. It's just a matter of visualization. So as I mentioned, there's kind of a 3-step roadmap. We've already completed the first one, which was having a referral system from the get-go. I knew I wanted to have that in there so people could at least like invite friends and be able to track friends that they invite. Or at least be able to start that process where we have that information in the back end. The second one is going to be both improving the referral link system that we use. So making it a lot more kind of interactive. If someone opens it up on a web browser, right? You can't download Digifox on a web browser. So basically making it where maybe a QR code pops up that you scan with your phone. We're going to do all kinds of things like that looks clean, professional, makes it less friction based for referring people. And all along with that as well, visualizing it. So that's all in phase 2. And then phase 3 is actually making payouts. And again, we're probably going to have the payouts launch when layer 2 arrives, because then network fees will start to diminish dramatically in a month basis. So sometime in the summer there for actual payouts. But you guys will be able to hopefully be able to see your visual obligation and stuff for referral income in sometime in May, once we rekindle the referral program.
Just a quick note to anyone who has their hand raised. If you could type your question in the Q&A box, we'll try to get to it before we run out of time. But I'll let Alicia ask Parik's question. It kind of has like 3 parts. I don't know if you saw that, Alicia.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. Would investors in the second round have the same weight as those in the initial round? And if yes, why? It would seem unfair to have people who enter now since there have been much growth since our initial investments. And if initial investors decide to invest more capital, would we have similar exposure to company as our initial investments? Sorry for the broken up question.
No, that's a fair question because I know I can understand, especially, and I do not mean this in a mean way, guys, because investing in startups can be very complex and stuff. I can understand with the way that I talked about it in the sense of there being another round through WeFunder, that you guys are worried that they might get the same kind of weighted stake in the company. And the answer is no. Everything at the end of the day depends on basically, it depends on 2 things. Valuation. So like what's the company valued at and what are they raising, right? And that determines how much percentage of like ownership or maybe equity stake in this case the company's giving up. So in regards to the WeFunder in this case, we kind of gave a window where we could raise up to $1 million. And if we raise to that full million, people will get about the equivalency of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's around like 7.5% of the company and safe notes that'll convert at a later date. Whereas if we do the Series A, I'm just tossing out numbers to kind of explain this, right? So we raised last time around between a $13 to $18 million valuation, depending if you got on the early bird round or the late round. If we raise, for example, say at $100 million valuation, and we're giving out the equivalency of equity in a Series A of like maybe, for example, even 7.5%, right? Let's just keep it very simple. Let's say it was the exact same percentage of equity. In this case, people are paying 5 times as much. So it kind of imagine it like this. You guys might know, for example, maybe like a company like Tesla, right? That's a publicly traded company. We're not publicly traded, but this same principle applies where, let's say Tesla stock, when you bought it, is at $10. You bought it in the early days, right? And now the company's grown a lot. Attention has come to the stock. Everyone's buying it. And now it's $50 on the market. And if someone wants to buy Tesla stock, they're going to have to pay $50 for it. So a 5x premium. It's the same exact thing, but we're just doing it through these private rounds in this case that are open to the public through equity crowdfunding. So hopefully that makes sense. Overall, people are, if they're going to be participating in that round, they're paying much more as a percentage of ownership in the company, right? Because the valuation has increased, right? Now, the good news here is that we are planning to not give up as much equity probably as the first round. And outside of that as well, raise at a higher valuation, which is really cool. So we're going to be able to be able to still remain very, very independent. You guys, again, even though you don't have technically, just want to make it very clear. I've always tried to be transparent about this because some people I don't think get it with equity crowdfunding. You guys technically don't have voting rights, but that all is represented by John as the lead investor. That's something that you have to do through WeFunder and most equity crowdfunding sites is have a lead investor to represent the kind of mass set of investors. 990 investors, keeping up with that would be too complex. So it's that's the key thing overall. I just wanted to explain that. So the good news is, yeah, you guys got in at a much cheaper valuation than what people would invest in at the Series A, that's the good news.
Mm-hmm. Pino says, in IT in general, one of the biggest threats is another company that is doing more or less the same and is surpassing you because they have a smarter / more advanced product, or they have a really good marketing or momentum. How do you see this for Digifox? That's
a very good point. So, in this case, again, I don't want to give away what we got in store because I could very, very readily answer. I could readily answer that question because you're 100% right. No, I got to be completely honest with you guys. When it comes to Digifox and any other crypto wallet, any other crypto application, exchange, platform, you name it, right? Take for example, earning interest on crypto. You can do it, Celsius natively or Compound natively in Digifox. That's our kind of USP. We have multiple aggregation we have an aggregation of lending providers where you can earn interest. But take like Celsius and BlockFi, right? 2 great providers that have grown like wildfire. It's a question of, in this case, who can outmarket the other, right? They offer the same service, maybe slightly different rates, maybe slightly different unique propositions. They generally offer the same service. So how do you keep pace? And it is marketing. And I understand this very clearly. We think about it a lot at our company. My whole goal is to make a product that can constantly create unique selling propositions, things that are going to make people go, wow, I've never seen that before. That's a unique feature. And the thing is, are people going to copy us later down the line, 3, 6 months out, a year out? Yeah, there's going to be some people who copy for sure. But so long as you keep making USPs that are tied towards your product vision and make sense for your users, it's a very great growth hack to maintain your kind of dominance and leadership within the market. So one of the big things we have coming up, again, I can't talk about per se today, but will come up in one of the next 2 up and coming WeFunder updates in May. One of those features is going to be able to get us into a position where we not only bolster our revenue long-term, building a streamlined ability to actually grow and scale, but outside of that as well, our user count as well, to really leapfrog against any other smart contract wallets. I'm not really one for picking up names or anything. There's plentiful amounts of wallets, and I really think a lot of them do a great job, but some of them really seem set on just being a crypto wallet. And that's not us at the end of the day. We want to become a standout cryptocurrency platform that's going to win over users in the long run, and make sure that we stay as their first choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. I'm bubbling at the seams to tell you guys, but I want it to be like, just like with 2.0, we kind of like to do things in a little bit of stealth mode. We don't want to keep you guys in the dark. I know some people have been asking about like roadmaps. We do have a roadmap feature we want to definitely get up for you guys, where you can get an idea of some of the features, but we want to keep some things completely under wraps. We want to give you guys big surprises, because as much as I know that can sound a bit nerve-wracking when investing in stuff, we know our users very good because we constantly listen to support. We constantly are listening to you guys, both on the investor side, user side, everything. We get a very good scope of what people want to see. And then we blend it in with our element of what we see Digifox being. And they inevitably end up kind of syncing up, ironically enough.
For sure. Alicia, want to grab this?
Yeah. Asin is asking, what is the AUM?
Not sure if we can share that, but.
Yeah, I don't have the absolute number for today, but we do have basically a couple million in AUM. So okay. The good news is we're basically, I think we've broken above in Celsius, I think over 10 million AUM. So it's actually, to be honest, guys, for a startup, and I think as many of you understand, these things compound over time. That's really good. I'm very happy that we got to 10 million. A lot of that growth came post Digifox 2.0.
Yep.
Anyways, long story short, in the sense of being able to provide those numbers in the future, I hope to kind of mention those and the actual visualized growth in the reports that we put out.
Sure.
Those kind of quarterly summaries that I want to hopefully start doing in the future.
For sure. Abdul says, any long-term plans to enter any mining spaces, specifically NRG?
Okay, so he's referring in this case to the energy blockchain where you can hold cryptos and stake. You can run masternodes.
Oh.
Unfortunately, we're not looking too much to get into masternodes. And the only reason I say we originally actually had this was one of the feature releases I was considering doing back in the summer, was staking in masternodes was kind of a big thing for a little while. The unfortunate reality is that for those services, we'd probably want to work with an integrated partner who does it, by the books, keeps costs extremely efficient, so it opens up to as many people as possible. But it's just not the top requested feature from our users, unfortunately. I'd say that for every time someone asks us about a new feature or an addition, probably 1/20th or 1/30th of the time they ask about masternode services. So it's just not one of our big priorities at the moment. Nonetheless, we want to be an all-in-one finance app. So as staking continues to grow, and if it becomes a higher demanded product, we're definitely gonna amplify it. And I still hope long-term we can get it added in there for some of the most major cryptos. I do love what Tommy and the team at Energy are doing. They're another self-funded crypto project, one of the many few, whereas a lot of people go out and raise capital. So very, very proud of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Probably do another question or two, and then.
Okay. Lisa, you want to grab this one?
Yeah. Plans for integration with other blockchains such as ADA, DOT.
Yeah, it's a good question. Another one we've gotten asked about outside of ADA or Cardano. The other one was Polkadot. And then the third one that we get asked probably the most is like Binance Smart Chain because they have applications like PancakeSwap that have lower fees, than Uniswap, et cetera. Here's the thing overall, guys, about that. That's basically we had a pretty strong internal discussion where for right now where the product stands, it's very clear that like swaps are what people love to use outside of deposits earning interest. Like swaps are the kind of more high functioning activity in the app where you're going in and out of the market, trading from one altcoin to the next. And that's what a lot of people like doing. So we want to make sure that we can service that. Unfortunately, as much as I was very eager on saying, oh, let's just migrate over to Binance Chain, right? Let's just start offering people to swap through PancakeSwap and, basically do what they do through Uniswap, but for a different set of tokens and for a lot lower fees. The unfortunate reality is that the systems are not in place where we can bridge all of those assets from your current existing wallet over to Binance Smart Chain. Taking the time to actually build out PancakeSwap and integrating Binance Smart Chain would take a ton of time. Binance, their assisting resources are quite limited as a company to actually get people integrated with Binance Smart Chain. And above all, if we were to do all that, if we were able to somehow bridge all the assets, everything like that, it would probably take us towards around the time in July and August where layer 2 is going to be available for Uniswap. So it just doesn't make sense on a business standard, unfortunately. It would take a lot of reworking. It would be ditching so much of what we've already built. The good news is, again, as I mentioned, we have this feature coming up that will not be weighed down by gas fees and will kind of serve as not only a USP for us, but outside of that as well, will kind of help us to give us that kind of open window of time that we need in order to integrate with layer 2 and wait for Uniswap to be able to deploy on layer 2, because we cannot lower swap fees until Uniswap actually launches their new protocol version, Uniswap v3, on Optimism, which is a layer 2 scaling solution. So a lot of technical jargon, but I always like to say this again, guys, like I live and breathe Digifox. I want to get these systems going, but the unfortunate reality is there's usually a reason why we have to go down the route that we're going. The chain of command kind of goes up to Uniswap in this case. They don't have any ability to control us as a company, but it is what allows you to do those swaps quite simply.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we'll answer one more question from Tim, and then I know there's a few other ones here. If you guys want to drop those in the Digifox Investor channel in Discord, we can do our best to answer you guys there. But we'll just answer one more question here because we're already a little bit over our time. So Tim says, where does the company stand on using cheaper but arguably riskier, like more centralized and censorable EVMs like Binance Smart Chain or a Tendermint-based lending and borrowing solution like Kava? Kava seems less risky, but still riskier than Ethereum since it relies on such a small number of validator nodes and also seems closely connected with Binance.
Yeah, and this is kind of the one of the other bullet points that I forgot to mention. And to be honest and candid, guys, it's where people get a bit opinionated, right? Because I feel both sides of the fence here. This is, again, another reason why we didn't integrate Binance Smart Chain. Binance Smart Chain's validation process is comprised of, I think it's around like 12 to 24 nodes. And for those who don't know, nodes are basically, in this case, validators confirming transactions on the network, right? And keeping copies of the ledger of, Bob sent this to Alice. Alice swapped this token for this token. Bob is deposited this much into an interest-bearing protocol, and he has withdrawn from that protocol at so-and-so date and time, and so a certain amount, right? The unfortunate thing about Binance Smart Chain is its scalability compromises a bit of its, to a pretty large degree of its decentralization. Ethereum is expensive, but Ethereum maintains absolute decentralization. There is no Vitalik cannot step in today and say, let's reverse this one transaction. No, I sent it to a wrong address. He's the founder of Ethereum, but he can't do it at this point. It's just like, the thing is, what's so great about Ethereum is that that transactions are confirmed when they're confirmed. Binance, on the other hand, though it hasn't had any issues to my knowledge, could very well have that issue, right? And you are trusting Binance in this case to basically solidify and delivering things, to not censor transactions if regulators apply pressure to them, right? There's all kinds of things that we have to be worried about for you guys as consumers and users. Not to say that I don't love what they're doing. Look, I got to say, I'm just as evenly irritated by the high network fees. I mean, for the factor of, fees being where they are. I mean, it was a major cost for us over the last, year or so, having to do smart contract wallet generation. And, we originally had covered network fees. They just got so expensive. And now that's costing our users, right? So we want to make sure, again, that, as I mentioned, we kind of realize the situation where we're at and how can we pivot our business model, and also maybe, explore a really cool feature that isn't so much per se DeFi in this case, but really tackles an area of the crypto space that no one has done right now, like practically no one in this case that we're aware of. So we think that we're going to come out swinging in May with this feature release. We're very excited.
For sure. Awesome, cool. Well, I typed you guys messages, the other questions that we had to put it in the Discord chat. But thank you so much for being here, Nick, and for Alicia for being here as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to do Q&As like this. It's always really fun. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for investing in us and believing in us, and just for joining us on this chat. Well, I'll try to make this into a private YouTube video and upload it to the channel next week, so that you guys can rewatch it, or other people who weren't here can watch it. But thank you, Nick, for being here. Thank you, Alicia. We'll see you guys all in the next webinar. And again, we really do appreciate your support. It means the world to us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Hope, Alicia, thank you guys for being here. And thank you all as well for listening in as well and asking the questions that you guys asked. Really means a lot. So like I said, expect some updates coming in early May, possibly even late April. We'll see how things go. But we're very, very excited about the future, guys. And just know that we're doing our best, and we want to make sure we do right by you guys. So thanks to all of you who attended, and to the broader range of over 990, almost nearly 1,000 investors across the world who supported us and WeFunder. We really appreciate it. So stay tuned, guys. More to come in the future.